The date is December 7th, 2014, and we're currently waiting for the fourth team to be announced into the college football playoffs. And with Baylor, TCU, and Ohio State fans waiting, let's see who that fourth team was.
Who will play Alabama? And it will be the Buckeyes of Ohio State.
Even though lots of people were mad at the fact that Ohio State got number 4, this would lead to some of the best moments in the college football playoff era.
No, they can't. Touchdown. Loses the football. Ball comes out. It's scooped up by the Ducks.
But these two moments weren't even the best moments of this season. Let's take a look back at how college football looked 10 years ago. Let's start in the offseason where Lane Kiffin was hired at Alabama to be offensive coordinator after being fired from USC as a head coach. Going into the 14-15 season, the person that will replace Kiffin as a head coach full-time would be Steve Sarkisian. Other coaching moves that happened in the offseason was the legendary college coach Mack Brown ended up retiring. You also had James Franklin leaving Vanderbilt for Penn State, and you had Bill O'Brien leaving Penn State to go to the Houston Texans. And we all know how conference realignment is such a big thing going into the current college football season, but back then, some teams decided to move from conferences also. Louisville would decide to move from the American to the ACC. Then you have Rutgers move from the American to the Big Ten. Maryland moved from the ACC to the Big Ten. Appalachian State, Georgia Southern, and Old Dominion each moved from the FCS level to the FBS level. And this season, it was going to be a total of 12 teams playing in different conferences from the previous season. Also, by the end of the season, the Big 12 would be in talks with Cincinnati for Cincinnati to move to the Big 12, but that wouldn't happen, at least at that time. Of course, in 2024, Cincinnati is now in the Big 12. It lunged or rolled into the quarterback that was not forced by an offensive player, was now penalized. Now, before the college football season starts, there always is something to look forward to in the college football video game. This was going to be the first college football season to not have a video game before the season started since 1992. College football and video game fans will go a whole decade without having the ability to play with their best player or their favorite player in the game. Luckily, the college football revamp team will have us covered from the year 2020 to the year 2024. But thankfully, just a little over a month ago, EA Sports released a new college football video game. And before I get any further in this video, I want to say shout out to KTO and Swish y'all for giving me this video idea. Now let's take a look at some of the top incoming freshmen going into this 2014 season. The number 1 freshman according to 247 Sports was Myles Garrett. The number 2 freshman according to 247 Sports was Leonard Fournette. Marlon Humphrey as well was ranked inside the top 10. And then after them, Tony Michelle, Nick Chubb, Deshaun Watson, Royce Freeman. Oh, and all the way down the list, ranked as the 389th best player in the nation at this time, was Patrick Mahomes. A random fun fact, a guy named Chase Crouch was ranked above Patrick Mahomes, and since I'm an Illinois fan, I know very much about Chase Crouch. He sucked. Some key players returning for this season was Jameis Winston, the Heisman Trophy winner from the previous season.
No, throw it. End zone, jump ball. Touch.
Amari Cooper, seen as one of the best, if not the best wide receiver in the nation.
Left side, got a man open. Got the touchdown, Amari Cooper.
Melvin Gordon, one of the best running backs in the nation.
Ibrahim Campbell has the angle. Touchdown.
Nick Marshall, starting quarterback of the national championship runner-up team for Auburn.
Collins chases him and can't catch him.
Then you also had guys like Trevon Boykin, Marcus Mariota, and Braxton Miller. Now let's move on to some preseason storylines. One of the biggest storylines was for Florida State repeat as national champions, but this time in the college football playoff era. How would Alabama look with Blake Sims at quarterback as they were trying to go for their 4th national title in this decade? Could Auburn pull off some of the same magic as they pulled off the previous season? Over in the Pac-12, could Oregon make a push for the national title? And which team in the Big 12 can make a push for the college football playoffs even though they didn't have a championship game? Now let's hop into the season. A key game in week 1 was Florida State versus Oklahoma State, where Florida State would actually win 37-31. In week 2, we will already see some chaos as Virginia Tech will upset number 8 Ohio State. And due to Braxton Miller getting injured and having to take a medical red shirt, freshman JT Barrett will start this game and he will struggle having 3 interceptions. Number 14 USC and number 13 Stanford faced off that same week, in which USC won 13-10 as they had a late game fumble to seal the win. Boston College though in week 3 will upset USC 37-31. And South Carolina will upset number 8 Georgia 38-35. Week 5 of the 14-15 season is arguably the greatest week in college football history. Number 2 Oregon, number 3 Alabama, number 4 Oklahoma, and number 8 UCLA all lost in the same week. On top of that, we got peak Pac-12 after dark as we had Cal versus Washington State, and which was a classic as Cal will win 60-59. And this was the first time since week 11 of the 1990 season where 4 teams ranked inside the top 6 of the AP poll lost in the same week. Ole Miss and Mississippi State will both jump to number 3 and number 4 in the AP poll, which kind of shocked a lot of people. And this must have been the greatest October in college football history because literally the next week we got TCU versus Baylor. Number 5 Baylor and number 9 TCU will have a classic 2010s Big 12 game where Baylor will outlast TCU 61-58. Number 3 Mississippi State will beat number 2 Auburn 38-23. After this win, Mississippi State would jump Florida State for the number 1 spot. The Bulldogs became the first team in the history of the AP poll to go from unranked to number 1 in just 5 weeks. And literally the next week, Baylor will lose to West Virginia 41-27, and this would give Baylor their first loss of the season. Another highlight this week was number 2 Florida State beating number 5 Notre Dame 31-27. And the next week was the beginning of the end for Ole Miss as they would lose to LSU in embarrassing fashion. Then the following week they would lose to Auburn 35-31, knocking them out of the college football playoffs. But that win didn't matter for Auburn because the next week they would lose to Texas A&M, and that would knock Auburn out of the college football playoff race as well. November 15th is when Mississippi State will run into the SEC buzzsaw that is Alabama, and they will lose 25-20. November 22nd, Ole Miss will lose to Arkansas 30-0. And now we skip all the way to rivalry week. Ohio State will suffer another loss at quarterback as early in the 4th quarter against Michigan, JT Barrett will get injured. This means now third-string quarterback Cardale Jones will have to step up and win the game for Ohio State. Jones played okay, the defense and Ezekiel Elliott closed out the game for Ohio State. And now things seem iffy for Ohio State college football playoff chances because now you got Braxton Miller who got hurt, JT Barrett who got hurt, and now you got Cardale Jones who's going to have to play in the championship game and then in the college football playoffs. In the Big Ten championship game is where Cardale Jones put college football fans on notice as he went 12 for 17 for 257 yards and 3 touchdowns. Florida State, Alabama, and Oregon will all win the rest of the major conference championship games, while the Big 12 didn't have a conference championship game. And this will come back to bite the Big 12 as Ohio State got that number 4 spot, which was kind of shocking to some people because lots of people thought Baylor and TCU were the better team. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but if I'm not mistaken, this college football playoff committee decision and the following year where TCU got held out of the college football playoffs is a big reason why the Big 12 has a conference championship game in today's era of college football. And to make the decision look worse by the college football playoff committee, of course, Ohio State was down to the third-string quarterback, which didn't look good because Baylor and TCU both had their starting quarterbacks. And you probably know this wouldn't be the last decision that made people question the college football playoff committee. And I'm very late on this, but Mississippi State got knocked out of the college football playoff race in rivalry week after they lost to Ole Miss. And just about a week later, you had Marcus Mariota being selected as the Heisman Trophy winner, with Melvin Gordon and Amari Cooper coming in 2nd and 3rd place. Another thing that happened in December was UAB announced that it would drop the football program at the end of the season, but it would come back in 2017. A week later, Samaje Perine, Oklahoma Sooners running back, would rush for 427 yards, breaking Melvin Gordon's single-game FBS rushing record. Now we jump to the first ever college football playoff, where the first game is Florida State versus Oregon in the Rose Bowl. To start out, this game was actually close, as it was 18-13 Oregon lead at halftime. But Oregon came out in the second half and smacked Florida State as they outscored them 27-7 in the 3rd quarter, and they won the game 59-20. The most memorable play from this game was that Jameis Winston slipped, fall, and fumble. Now we move on to Alabama versus Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl. And where many people thought Ohio State didn't deserve to be there, they played like a team that did deserve to be there. Now Cardale Jones played okay as he had 240 passing yards to go along with 1 touchdown and 1 interception, but it was really Ezekiel Elliott who they leaned on to win them this game. Ezekiel Elliott will have 20 rushing attempts for 230 yards and 2 touchdowns, including the 85-yard run that put Ohio State up 2 scores in the 4th quarter. Of course, Ohio State will win 42-35, advancing to the national title game. And now we go to the first ever college football playoff national championship between Ohio State and Oregon. Now this was a close game in the first half. It was 21-10 going into halftime with Ohio State leading. Oregon would then outscore Ohio State 10-7 in the 3rd quarter, making it 28-20 at the end of 3. But Ohio State was too much. Eventually, Marcus Mariota went down with an injury, and Ohio State scored 14 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. Once again, Ohio State leaned on Ezekiel Elliott this game as he had 36 rushing attempts for 246 yards and 4 total touchdowns. And I promise y'all I'm not tripping when I say I remember a video of like LeBron James celebrating Ohio State's national title win. And this is how college football looked 10 years ago. We had the first ever college football playoffs. We had Ole Miss and Mississippi State being 2 top 5 ranked teams at the same time. The Pac-12 was still a conference. Nick Saban was still a head coach. Melvin Gordon and Samaje Perine both broke FBS rushing records. And to cap it all off, we saw Cardale Jones, a third-string quarterback, come in and help Ohio State win a national title. But that's all for this video, and until next time, I'm out. Peace.